is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Season 1, Episode 14. Josh is going to Hawaii. In this episode, Rebecca is feeling much better about the kiss than Josh is. And she starts to realize a little too late that maybe she's the bad guy. It hasn't occurred to her yet. Hashtag relatable. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. First of all, a huge thank you to Ashley for commissioning this week's episode. Very, very much appreciate it. You guys, I'm going to wait to get into it because I'm afraid I will not leave myself enough time if I start off with it. But I got some shit to say about personal experience that makes me really internalize some of what's going on in this episode. So the way that this works out is predictably Rebecca driving home from this kiss, absolutely beaming and excited over the fact that they just kissed. And not just that they kissed. Josh kissed her. Josh initiated this. That is something, if you are Rebecca, to feel very, very positive about. Poor Josh, meanwhile, is just really bugging out. He looks extremely unhappy, extremely angry at himself. He is absolutely, riddled with guilt, as he puts it later. He does not know what to do. And he winds up going to see Father Bra, who tells him about how he blamed his baby brother for that baby bunny body because he is very high. Evidently was not expecting to have to minister to anybody tonight. And Josh just comes rolling up to his door with this crisis, and he did the best he could. Now, basically, his advice is simple. Tell Valencia. She might forgive you. And Josh is like, dude, we're talking about Valencia here, though. And, of course, Father Brat and Josh are like, yeah, you're screwed then. Like, they both assume, rightfully, that Valencia will dump Josh. Now, I also expected this, 100%. The thing is, when I think about how I would react if I found out that Owen had kissed another girl, is Owen and I are in such a different place relationship-wise than, she and Josh are. They just are not on the same page with nearly anything, but neither of them really seems to notice that most of the time, or really, they don't seem to prioritize that as something that should not happen constantly over and over again in a relationship. And for some people, you don't always need to be on the same page for your relationship to be strong. Like, there are people who thrive on the fact that they're so different from their partner. But these are not two people that I feel like that about. They both don't really seem to be the types that would be happy with what they have right now forever, which becomes an issue later on when it seems like Josh is only just starting to realize it after they work stuff out. But if I found out that Owen had kissed somebody else, I do think that I would forgive him and move past it. It would be really hard. It would take a long time for me to trust again. But a kiss is not a fuck. And a fuck one time would be bad enough, but an ongoing affair is even worse. There's all kinds of levels to cheating. He lost his head and kissed her in a moment, and I would definitely feel a way about that. But kissing is really like, I'm not ready to give up on a relationship because of a slip like that. Personally, I can totally understand if you are somebody who is not going to play that game. I respect that completely. I understand it. And I don't think I ever would have been somebody who thought I would be willing to forgive something like that. Like, I think past me would be startled to hear present me saying this. But when you really, really care about somebody, you have to weigh that against mistakes. People make mistakes. Now, that being said, that's me. And I did not think Valencia was going to have the same sort of measured reaction. As she says it to Josh, though, what you were expecting was the old me. This is the newer me, which is much more mature and evolved. So you know what? If she is managing to be this way, God bless. Like, I like to think the moment in which she got Rebecca's fake boyfriend to come over and it seemed that she was proven wrong and that they indeed were together was the moment that she started to realize maybe she needed to grow up in some of her attitudes. And also I think there is an aspect here of like, she has been suspicious of Rebecca this whole time and thinks that Rebecca is in love with Josh, but Josh is telling her, I am the one who initiated this. He's being very honest with her, which I really respect. It is really... The thing is that people will tell various parties involved in something, I told her what happened, and then you find out that they didn't really tell what happened. They told a softened version, worded in exactly such a way so that they are not saying a specific thing, but they are leading a person to assume a specific thing, and they know very well that's what they're doing when they word it that way. And they just hope that the person they're speaking to doesn't ask too many questions. And if they do ask the questions, chances are, if they've already started off with a manipulation, they are going to continue that and start to white lie, even in the midst of supposedly coming clean and being honest. So I respect the hell out of the fact that Josh is honest with Valencia about the fact that he is the one who initiated the kiss. And I think that that has to make a bit of a difference to Valencia. She doesn't ask exactly how Rebecca reacted to this, which I'm curious. Like, I feel like if I had been suspicious that this girl was into my boyfriend this whole time, and then my boyfriend came home and told me that he had kissed that girl, one of the first things I would do is ask, how did that girl react? Did she push you off her? Did she say, what are you doing? You have a girlfriend? Or did she go with it and seem to want more? And Valencia does not ask that because I'm guessing at this point, what Rebecca does isn't what matters to her. It's what Josh does and did, which again, maturity. But I'd want to know, you know, I would want to know if the suspicions that I had this whole time were true. I would want to know, especially in light of the fact that it seems like she did not have a boyfriend and then suddenly did and now doesn't again. I would have all kinds of questions about that. But we don't see a whole lot of the conversation there. I imagine if this had come up, it would have been mentioned. But what's interesting about this is that Rebecca is listening to this confession through the window when it happens. And Valencia asks Josh, do you love her? And he says, no, God, no. And this leads to Rebecca like crumpling up, basically. And I just can't help but laugh because, girl, he's talking to his girlfriend that he just cheated on after telling you that he can't do this, that he is committed to her and that he is not going to play this game. what did you think he was going to say? Did you really expect him to go, yeah, totally, I'm in love with her, to his girlfriend that he's trying to make things right with and keep the relationship together? Did you really think that's what he was going to say in that moment? Whether he does love you or not, you are not going to find out the truth to that answer, or the true answer to that question, while listening in on a conversation with the person that he hurt, whom he is trying to repair trust with. So she really takes this as gospel, that he doesn't love me. I can't believe this. Why doesn't he love me? And I'm just you can't listen to this. Now, I'm not even trying to say that that Rebecca has nothing to worry about. Clearly, Josh does love her. That's not it at all. I think there's obviously something there. I think, he even says to her a little bit later, I really feel something for you. But the idea that this moment is the one that she would hear and really take to heart is so naive and silly of her. Girl, wait for him to be with his priest. Go fucking spy on them while they're talking about it, because the priest did not ask Josh this question. And I would love to know what Josh's answer would have been had he been in God's house in front of one of his servants when it was asked of him. But there it is. So I'm getting way ahead of myself, of course, but this is the main event of this episode. Am I wrong? So we have to talk about it just to start off with. So let's back up. So to start things off, we have Rebecca sprinting to Paula's house to dish. And of course, then we have Josh going to the father's house to dish also. And what's going on with Rebecca and Paula is very, very different. Paula said something about how she expected the two of them to be having shower sex somewhere. And Rebecca says, I don't know what happened. He just bailed. He said he had to be somewhere. I don't know where he is or what he's thinking. And Paula seems genuinely surprised by this. And I'm just girl, would you still want Rebecca to be with the guy if, while he still had a girlfriend whom he had not confided to, he took Rebecca off to some hotel room and banged her? You don't feel like that would be a mark against him, that he would do that? I feel like it is, but Paula doesn't seem all that caught up in this. Which leads us to this whole thing. So Rebecca is talking with Paula about who they are in a rom-com. And she says, it's you're Kate Hudson and Josh is this British actor who's really cute, but nobody's ever heard of. And Valencia is the skinny bitch who ends up getting just what she deserves. And Rebecca says, I saw it as a fairy tale where I'm the spunky princess. Josh is the handsome prince who gets turned into stone. And Valencia is the witch who turned him into that stone. And this is key. This is something that keeps coming up over and over. At this point, Rebecca gets a call from Dr. Akopian, whom she has been making and canceling appointments with over and over again. This winds up being wildly important later. But she gets this call, cancels, agrees to pay the fee, and we have another brief glimpse of Rebecca not being aware of her financial situation. She is promising to pay the fee for the cancellation without a second thought. And later on, we find out that Rebecca is broke and has not been responsible, has not been educated on how to handle money, has never had to worry about this before ever. And it is a really great turn that I'm super excited about. It is hard to relate to a character who constantly can pay for everything and engage in these wild escapades that cost thousands of dollars simply because they can. That is not to say that it isn't wonderful when she is able to just pay for a thing and make it happen, because this is what gets Rebecca into places where the story gets more fun and interesting, when otherwise she would be left out in the cold. So you need her at times to have resources at her disposal in order for the plot to move forward. However, the revelation when she tries to book this flight to Hawaii that she doesn't have any money in her account, in fact it's negative, that none of her credit cards work, is really like, I had been low-key wondering what was going on with her financially, because she uses that $10,000 to try and set up her boss's, whose name, I swear to God, guys, Daryl, to set up his ex-wife. That woman tells Rebecca that she's not giving her her money back. Rebecca is, I think she says to someone at one point how, I really need to, like, can you pay for this because my savings account has been taking a big hit because I'm not getting that 10 grand back. Then it turns out that she donated like 10 grand to that, the camp, that company that, the charity that Josh was working with. She just keeps being able to like spend all this money on all of these things. And I was thinking to myself about, because this is what happens. It's just so funny. Guys, I would love to hear from you all about whether you remember the moment when she said that her savings had been almost depleted. Because for me, this is a fictional character. But I hear those words and that shit sinks in and causes a panic, even though it's not me and it is a fictional character. Doesn't matter. I'm still like, oh girl, what are you doing? You can't afford to do this other thing. Then why did you just spend that money? I was thinking that to myself. And then immediately following it up with, oh, I don't need to worry about that. Obviously the show isn't concerned about money and it's just a thing. I did not realize that the show was actually going to cope with that as something that a real person, like the way that a real person would have to deal with it. Erica says, I don't think she said depleted. She just asked Greg for a drink because she was out $10K. I feel like the line was like, I'm out $10K and that's most of my savings. I feel like it was something that was like, because she could, if she had just said I'm out $10K, I would be like, I don't feel like I would have internalized the moment the way that I did, because I would assume somebody like Rebecca, $10K isn't really that big a deal. But I feel like she followed it up with something that made it sound like that was like a big chunk of the money that she had saved up. And I immediately was like, girl, what? Like, she just didn't seem worried enough about it in the moment, considering the actual words that she had just said, that I couldn't wrap my brain around it. So I am absolutely dying to know what the show is going to do with her now that she doesn't have money to throw around, because that is just something that has gotten her in and out of a bunch of different situations, you know? But I'm again getting ahead of myself here. Just this thing with Dr. Akopian is like one of the first instances this episode of just like being reminded that she just throws money at things when she doesn't want to deal with them. So she says something to Paula at this point about how she needs to reach out to Josh, and Paula freaks out and is just like, girl, no, what are you talking about? Like, this is the exact moment where you want to keep your mouth shut. This is the exact moment that you want to leave him alone and try and play it cool and let him figure out what the next step is. The most crucial thing coming up is that you do not reach out to him in any way. And honestly, the thing is that's so frustrating here is that Paula is right. And she just said to Rebecca not to worry about canceling on her therapist, because what do you need a therapist for anyway when you've got me giving you all of this great advice? The thing is that it's not great advice. The thing is that she's right about this particular instance about Josh, and the way that you would want to handle this were you trying to accomplish what it is that Rebecca is trying to accomplish. But she is not stepping back and looking at overall what it is that she is doing. And by that I mean, Paula is not treating Rebecca like she's a real person. And the awful thing about it is that this is exactly what Rebecca wants. So when I say not treating her like she's a real person, in the moment that makes it sound like what I'm saying is she's dehumanizing her in a way that's like rude or something. And that's not exactly it. It's not that she's doing something insulting to Rebecca. It's that she is being selfish with Rebecca's life. She's behaving as if Rebecca were a movie or TV show that she was watching, or a video game. Like, have you guys seen those really lame video games for iPhone where you're like given like 3 choices, a multiple choice, and you have to choose what to do in any given situation, and it's like a continuing storyline? And a lot of the time the storyline is like, oh my God, my boyfriend cheated on me. What should I do? Should I storm out? I caught him with the other woman. Or should I yell at her? Or should I throw things? And you choose, like, throughout all of these different bits of drama, exactly the way that you would want to react. And that leads to the next plot point coming up. That's how Paula is behaving with Rebecca's life. And part of me really believes that it is genuinely because she loves Rebecca, because she believes that she is a good, intelligent, hardworking person who has had a rough run of things and deserves to be happy and just needs some guidance on how to handle things because she doesn't have the greatest judgment sometimes. And she's just trying to be a supportive friend because she knows that this is what Rebecca wants. And I want my friend to get what she wants. But then there's the other part of me who remembers Paula talking to her husband about getting addicted to Rebecca's relationship with Josh and treating this as if it's a fill-in for the fact that her own relationship is really hitting the rocks. And while things seem to have improved between Paula and her husband, that doesn't mean that this aspect of her obsession with Rebecca's life goes away magically all of a sudden. And I think that what Paula is telling Rebecca to do, if you're playing a video game with this character and you're trying to get to a point where she winds up with Josh, yes, she is making the right choices for this video game. She is choosing things that I think would work out for Rebecca if she were a 2-dimensional fictional character. But Rebecca in this universe is a real human being who is going to have to suffer the real long-term consequences of the choices that she's making. And there are other actual people involved. And that doesn't seem to quite register with Paula all the time. She sees them as side characters to Rebecca's story and not as full people who, while awful in some ways, are also like fucking human beings. And you don't necessarily want to be out here wreaking havoc and fucking up someone's life just because they're kind of conceited and a bitch sometimes. That doesn't mean that you get to just treat them however you want because you want something of theirs, you know? So this scene is really like, I don't know, there's something really foreshadowy about it in my mind. So then we have Rebecca and she's like sitting at her desk, her kitchen table, and she's trying to focus on work instead of focusing on trying to text Josh. And she's sitting there struggling with whether or not to send to Josh a picture of a red panda, because this is Josh's like favorite animal. And she found something really, really cute. And she's trying to use this as justification for getting in touch with him. And as she's sitting there completely bugging out over whether to do this or not, there's a knock at the door, and here's Josh. And he is talking to her about how they need to talk about this kiss. She is like all kinds of repressed excitement and crushiness. And he tells her, I can't stop thinking about it. And she says, me neither. And he says, I mean, it was, and she says, oh, I know it was. And he says, Rebecca, I feel something for you. And she says, yes. Oh my God, yes. Wow. We obviously have some kind of connection. No, we absolutely have a connection, Josh. And I feel so many things. And then he says, but kissing you was wrong. And he stands up and walks away. And she's like, what? And again, I need her to step back and see who Josh Chan is. She should have seen this coming. That is not to say that Josh isn't going to continue to think about this. But as somebody, I have always kind of played the long game when it comes to relationships. And maybe this points to just how manipulative I am, because I'm pretty good at reading people. That's part of what makes me good at the podcast, is like being able to look into characters and predict what they're going to do or understand why they're doing what they're doing. And this has always been a thing with me. I think that comes from having a lot of empathy. But what can go wrong about that is that you begin to have like an inversion where the empathy begins to go away because you start to get like Paula and see people as characters rather than as real people. So in this situation, were I on the outside of it, and I have not been somebody who was like trying to get someone away from their significant other. I have not, any time that I have been interested in somebody who has a significant other, I have always treated it as like, we're going to do some flirting and that's fun, but they're with somebody. And I pretty much just leave that alone, mostly because of the feel of, if he does want to hook up with me and he's with somebody, I'm going to lose respect for him. So I'm not even going to try and push and see if he would be down for that, because I low-key don't want to know if he would be down for that. And because of that, were I Rebecca, not only would I be 100% on the advice that Paula gives her, which is to not get in contact, but I would fully expect for him to come back at me with, look, this was a bad idea. If this is a guy that I like because he's a decent person, that is the correct response. This is how you want him to feel. You want him to realize that he was impulsive, that he is breaking someone's trust, that even if he feels something for you, he has put in time and made promises to someone else that he needs to deal with before he can make any promises to you. All of this is exactly what you want. This is all a signal that he is a good person with a conscience who cares about his relationships. And Rebecca wanting him to immediately tell her, yeah, so I'm definitely going to dump Valencia because I have feelings for you. Girl, that you don't want that. You really don't. I know you think you want that, but you fucking really don't. So his coming in here and saying all of this to her, and in the midst of telling her it was wrong, he is confessing that he genuinely does have feelings for her. This is perfect. This is exactly the scenario that if she were thinking things through a little bit more, she would want it to be. You know, this is like ideal, but she doesn't see it this way. So he goes on talking about how, that she has a boyfriend too, which she has to be like, no, we broke up. And then he says that he is going to be getting away for a little bit. So he says telling her is the right thing to do, even if it means ending the relationship. And Rebecca's like nodding, going, wow, because in her mind, yeah, please tell her, because then she'll dump you and you will have to be with me. That's what she's assuming. And like, I get that. I could see expecting that to be a thing. The thing is there, though, again, thinking about it from my perspective, if telling her were to end the relationship, do you want to start off your relationship with Josh being kind of the not only rebound, because you kind of would be even if you're not really, but also, do you want him to maybe resent you for ending a relationship that he was not totally ready to end? Now, I'm not saying that she ended it because he kissed her. Two people are involved here. But resentment isn't totally logical all the time. And he might see it that way. I don't feel like he would, but he might. There's a danger there. So this is something that I think she was like banking on that maybe would not have gone as well as she wanted it to if it had worked out differently. So yeah, then he says something that he's going to Hawaii. Hector's in a surf competition. Some of us are coming along. And he says, oh, thank God. The drama happens. Then I get to just get away from it for a while, hop on flight 425 to Maui on Thursday. Then I'll just be in Hawaii watching the sunset, wondering about the future. So yeah, he tells her the exact flight that he's going to be on and basically is being kind of a shit because he's like, I am going to drop this bomb in Valencia's lap and she is going to dump me and then I'm going to flee the state. Like, dude, not great. I understand the urge to do it, but it's not great. I say this with full awareness that when things went left with me and Brendan, this is exactly what I did. So I want everybody to be aware that at the end of this episode, I'm going to get real with y'all about how my judgment failed me during a situation like this, which led me to being very much the villain in my own story. So we get this other whole conversation with her and Paula where Paula tells her that she has to go to Hawaii. And then we have the meeting where Dylan, Dwayne, Daryl, there it is. Daryl tells everybody that he's bisexual. Guys, this song is the fucking funniest thing. It is, they really nailed this. There have been a couple songs where I'm like, I get what they're going for. I feel like they just missed it. Like the song like, I give good parent, she gives good parent. As much as I enjoy that song, I like saw a clip of an interview with her where she was explaining that the vibe, or maybe I read an interview, was supposed to be reminiscent of a Nicki Minaj song. And while I did get bits of that from the wigs and everything, the actual like tone of the song is way too poppy. It doesn't feel like that's, but this like I'm getting by and being like an 80s pop rock song is fucking so dead on. All of the lyrics, like everything about it. And it's really uncomfortable. Everybody in the room just doesn't really know why he's feeling the urge to announce this to them the way that he is. And there's a new person in the office named Maya who is really excited thinking that this meeting is for her to introduce herself. And it's really, really not. And there's a lot of the like different stereotypes being brought up about how being bi is just a stop on the way to Gay Town, as I think Carrie Bradshaw so famously put it on Sex and the City. But he is like really talking about how I'm not just gay and like in denial. I like both. This doesn't mean that I'm promiscuous either, because I take things slow with whomever I'm with. And just like I'm not confused. This isn't just a phase. It's amazing, guys, how much even people who are gay positive are not supportive of the concept of bisexuality. And I mean, I was definitely here, probably like a 10 or 15 years ago, I was in a place where I was just like, come on, you're gay or you're straight. What are you doing? Because I didn't understand. I didn't understand that like there is like a giant spectrum and people can fall anywhere along this spectrum, and that's fine. But yeah, this whole like this concept of bisexuality as just being like a layover until you actually decide on what your sexuality is really frustrating. And now I have a lot of bisexual friends, and I get to like hear a lot more about the various things that they have been told or that have been assumed about them. And it's really amazing. Like, especially if you are a bisexual girl and you have been with a boy for a long time in a relationship, or if you're a bisexual guy and you've been with a girl, the attitudes towards each of them are very, very different. Women who are in relationships with bisexual men are often seen as like taking a huge risk. And how could you be with somebody who had been with guys? And yeah, like there's a really huge stigma there for both the guy and the girl in that relationship. Meanwhile, a bisexual woman in a relationship with a guy, everybody's like, you're not really bi. You're only pretending to be bi because you think guys think it's hot and you just want attention. See, you're with this dude. You can't really be gay because you're with a guy. And if you were, and it's like, yeah, but she's not gay. She's bi. That's the whole point. And you can be bi and in a committed relationship. Being bisexual doesn't mean that you just fuck everybody all the time. No more than being straight means that you just fuck every person of the opposite sex you ever meet. It doesn't make any sense. But this is apparently a fucking stereotype that is just blows me away a little bit that people still think this. But there it is. So this song is just really funny. And eventually Maya stands up and is like, I know this is personal for the first day, but I'm also bisexual and I'm so glad that this office is so open. And Daryl interrupts her to be like, does anybody else have opinions except for Maya, who seems to think that this entire meeting is about her for some reason? And fucking Jim raises his hand and is like, are you sure you're not just gay? And Daryl is like, dude, oh my God. Did you not hear anything that I said? Jesus Christ. And then they get interrupted by an alert where it turns out that Rebecca Bunch is getting honored by the city because she busted the case about the water wide open. And Paula runs into Rebecca's office to tell her about all of this and interrupts just as Rebecca is getting a card declined alert on a bunch of different credit cards trying to buy this ticket. So what does Rebecca do? Does she decide to cut back on things and be smart about it all in order to get her life back together? No. She decides to like sell her couch and sell the Garfinkel ring that she is sent by her mother as a I'm proud of you token. Finally, she has been absolutely like obsessing over getting this fucking ring. And the instant she has it in her hand, she pawns it. And of course she is like out here being like, I'm coming back for that. What makes you think it will still be there, girl? Like, sincerely, that kind of risk makes no sense to me. It has to be a plot point later, right? Somebody else buys that ring and she goes and tries to track them down and figure out who it was and get it back because her mother's coming to visit or something like that. Because there is no reason to assume when you pawn something that it'll just be sitting around waiting for you to come and pick it up again later. Like, no. I mean, pawn shops are like prime real estate for people who are trying to pick shit up for cheap. So, yeah. Girl, no. What are you doing? It's so awful and hard to watch because she's just, as she puts it to Paula, I don't really think about money. And Paula just doesn't even know what to say to that and just says, wow, that must free up some time. And that's exactly the reaction. I've talked about it with Rashawn because Rashawn has always been somebody who has struggled with money the way that I have. And she and I have often talked about like, well, what do you think it's like to be able to just pay your bills on auto pay? Just set it and forget it. and not actually have to stagger when things come out of your account. Because if they go through in the wrong order, not even if they go through on the wrong day, but if they go through on the wrong order on the wrong day, you will be so screwed. And this is something that I think people who have had enough for most of their lives, they don't understand this constant paranoia. I am only now at this point in my life starting to get to a place where I can save and set money aside. I have never been here before. And it's one of those things where you want to be like celebratory about it and be like, oh, I'm so glad that I'm here. But all I can feel is this looming sense of dread that it will be going away and I better make the most of it while I can. There is no reason to think that. There really isn't. But all I can think is it won't last. Because that's how it tends to go. When you are somebody who has always struggled with money, you usually struggle because life is full of little emergencies that when they come up, clean you out. So you have a good period of making money and being able to save, and then your car breaks down. You get a bad tooth that has to be pulled. You wind up with the flu and miss a bunch of work. Somebody's water pipe breaks, or your fucking heater goes out in your house and you have to buy a $5,000 new one, which happened while I was in Philly. I had to pay $800 to get the air conditioning fixed earlier this summer. Shit happens, and you can really think you're on top of it all you want, but especially in the US where there is no healthcare, good luck. So yeah, the idea of just not having to think about money is just, I can't imagine that kind of freedom of that portion of my brain. I just don't know what I would do if I didn't have to constantly be worrying about this. Freeing up some time, freeing up some mental energy and some labor. There is just so much about that does not compute for me. And then later on, we find out that her car is being repossessed as well, because she did not pay her lease because it was on auto pay and she hadn't checked her account since 2011. So she didn't notice that her payments weren't going through. And what does she say when she realizes that her car is getting impounded? She says something about how she can just sell it. And it's leased. But clearly she does not know what that word means. So Paula is just looking at her like, girl. She's like, what? Do I not own my car? Paula, why are you looking at me like that? Do I not own my car, Paula? She has no idea. Apparently she has no savings or a retirement fund set up. Just girl. And yeah, if you've never worried, then why would you think about it? So we're going to go to everything that happens with Greg. I said last episode how I was really hopeful that just because Heather was the one who told Greg to run after Rebecca, and just because Heather is so cool and elevated in her thinking so much of the time, that she wouldn't just be cool about Greg. And I am pleased to report that the show is playing with exactly both the ideas that I was batting around. They are having Greg expect Heather to be really cool about everything, and Heather trying to be really cool about everything, but also being very angry and not able to hide that all the time. And Greg is mystified. Oh, you dumped me. And she finally has to be like, holy shit, dude. That was a test. I was telling you to go after her, and what you were supposed to do was be like, oh my God, no, I am not in love with her. I am very happy with you. Why would I do that? Why would I ruin this? But instead, what does he do? He caves immediately and is like, you're right, I am in love with her, and takes off. Now, I don't love the concept of this was a test, because it makes it sound like it was really manipulative. But really the thing is, trying to be like, you dumped me, you were being really obvious about the fact that you're into someone else. She isn't an idiot. And she can't just go on with your relationship and ignore that and behave as if she isn't aware that you feel this way about somebody else. How is she supposed to live with that? So, as like, the thing that, even if he does have feelings for Rebecca, he should have done is when Heather points this out, he'd be like, listen, I'm not settling for you. I just realized that this person, while I did have feelings for her, and I still do in some ways, is unhealthy for me and a bad idea. And I'm not interested in getting involved. And I really want to see where this goes between us. He doesn't have to even deny that he had feelings, or maybe even still does, with Rebecca. He just has to, like, make it clear that Heather is a priority. But he just drops Heather so fast and literally flies to LA. Like, dude, you know? And so he tells Heather, like, when she finally confesses to him, you broke my heart. Are you kidding me? Why am I mad at you? And he's like, well, tell me, what can I do to make this better? And she says, you're just going to have to live with the uncertainty, because I am aware with my rational mind that you're not an asshole, that we just weren't right for each other, that you just don't really feel the same way about me that I feel about you. But my emotional side is going to be here too, and occasionally pop out and be really, like, you know, mean and angry and sad. And you're just going to have to deal with it. Like I'm dealing with it. And I like this. She doesn't give him anything to do. There's no assignment that can fix this. It is just, that's life. Things suck sometimes. And you kind of just have to, like, let it suck and get through it. And that's it. And I deeply appreciate this whole part of this plot. So we have Daryl on a date with White Josh. And it's adorable. He, like, tells White Josh, they're out at this really, really fancy restaurant. And he tells White Josh that he wants him to meet his colleagues. And White Josh is like, dude, look, I'm really happy for you that you came out and that things are going well for you and everybody's been so supportive. But you only just came out. This is our very first date and you're taking it super duper seriously. Maybe go and date a little bit and see what else is out there before you, like, get way too serious too fast with the first person that you've met, you know, like, and I get why Daryl takes this kind of personally, but of course I also understand where Josh is coming from on this. And I feel like Josh is, like, just so level-headed about the way that he says things. And White Josh is, like, the wise man of this show in a lot of ways. He is the one that, like, gets it the most. And eventually Daryl comes back around and is like, look, so I went on a date with a girl named Charlie and a guy named Dana, just to make things really fucking confusing. And honestly, I kind of don't like anybody I've met as much as I like you. And Josh seems very touched by this. And is like, all right, look, buddy, how about this? How about we start over, clean slate, and we go on, like, a regular date and not to the restaurant where my family came for their silver wedding anniversary. And I am 100% here for this. And this is the cutest relationship in the history of television. And I want it to work out so, so bad. So I'm invested. That's all I'm saying. So then we have Rebecca, and she had been out. She first sold her couch and agreed to get naked on it so that she could get an extra $25 for it from some guy. Then she goes and pawns the Garfinkel ring and very unwisely goes and spends that money on, like, a big hat and sundress and plans to buy donuts. Like, girl, you do not have the money to do this the moment that you get some money. What are you doing? But there it is. And she runs into Valencia, who does not see her. And Valencia is on the phone with her mother, telling her how excited she is because Josh has made it clear that they need to have a big, important talk. And she's pretty sure that Josh is going to ask her to marry him. And all of a sudden, Rebecca realizes that Valencia, as much as I have tried to make her the bad guy, is a person who believes that she has a future with this dude and is getting her hopes up for this joyous moment that is going to turn around and be one of the most painful of her entire life. And this leads to her following Valencia to Josh's house when she's supposed to be like going to the ceremony where she's given the key to the city, and taking a detour to listen in on Josh's confession. And I love the moment where Valencia forgives Josh and stands up in front of this big like sunburst mirror, and the light comes down on her head like and makes it like she's the Madonna forgiving him standing there. It's like, it's so good. It's so good. And Rebecca walks away dejected, and then we get the I'm the villain in my own story. Guys, I love this so much. Especially there's a moment when she's thinking about the rom-com thing, and she's like, I'm the bitchy girl in the corner of the poster. It's just, guys, this happens, man. Especially when you want something really bad. That's like the thing, is that you let what you want blind you to the fact that there are people involved with feelings. So when I met Owen on Twitter, I was married, had been for 7 years, and things between Brendan and I had already begun to fall apart. And truth be told, by the time I left, we had agreed about 3 weeks earlier that we should get a divorce. We had already come to that conclusion. But we were also still on pretty good terms with each other, despite the fact that I had been out, like, getting emotionally involved with other people because I was very unhappy. And I was not willing to break off the relationship despite being unhappy, because there was a part of me that felt like I could use other people as a filler to get what I needed emotionally while Brendan and I worked things out. And eventually I would be able to wean myself off these outside relationships and come back to my actual husband, and that we could reconnect and like rekindle what we had used to have. And Brennan wasn't a bad guy. He was just extremely distant, and he was a hard worker, but a bit of a workaholic, and his job required a lot of travel. So he was frequently gone. He worked very long days. He would be gone overnight a lot. He traveled to Europe, to Japan, to other states, and would, he was gone a lot. And I am kind of high maintenance. I like attention. I like one-on-one time. I like doing special things together. I like all that stuff. And I don't think I realized that about myself yet. So I was just like shriveling up, desperate for somebody to like notice and care. And because he and I were doing the podcast together, it was like a perfect storm, because there were a ton of people listening who were getting a vibe off me. And I say getting a vibe off me, and I'm not trying to say that I did this on purpose, but I think I was putting it out there without quite realizing it, that I was unhappy, because I was getting a lot of dudes in my inbox trying to come on to me, and I do not get that anymore. It doesn't happen now. So I have to think that that was me. Or it might have just been the particular fan base that Song of Ice and Fire appeals to was a lot creepier than the fan bases that I appeal to now, or the fact that I'm like a militant feminist now and I'm just not approachable, which good, yay. But the reason that I noticed Owen was because he frequently interacted with the podcast Twitter and was never creepy, not one time, and never was inappropriate, never even like there were occasional like flirts, but it was never ever anything approaching inappropriate. And I thought he was very cute. And I started to just get more and more interested in him tweeting at me. And then one day there came this moment, and there had been another time where somebody on Twitter really came for me. There was a longtime listener and supporter who suddenly decided that he was going to turn on me for some reason. And I will never forget this because I responded to him and was showing Brendan my responses and what this guy was saying. And all of these other listeners were chiming in to defend me, and Brendan did not. Until I said something to him, like, are you going to say anything to this person? Do you feel the urge to defend me, your wife, from this attack at all? And he finally did, but it was just so little, so late, just because I had asked him to. And that really bothered me. And what made me really sit up and take notice of Owen was that somebody started to come for me one day, and I got really upset about it, but I was in the middle of Easter dinner with Brendan and his family. And I couldn't get into it the way that I wanted to. So I had to put my phone down. And it started to like buzz out of control, but I didn't look at it. And then about an hour and a half later, I came back and looked, and it was just one notification after another of him going in on this guy who was being a real asshole and defending me up and down and telling this guy to go fucking take several seats and essentially treating me the way that I wished so much Brendan would. Giving a shit about the fact that I needed somebody to step in for me, that I couldn't always do everything myself. And this led to us beginning to like direct message one another, and then eventually to text one another, and then eventually to video message one another, until I was having essentially a full-blown affair from across the country with somebody that I had never actually met. And Brendan and I already knew that we were on the rocks, but then we decided to divorce, and I was going to stay in Philly and work until I could save enough money to get my own place and then move out and eventually actually begin dating Owen from afar, and we would see where it went. But it didn't really work out because Brendan found out about the way Owen and I were talking and the fact that it had gotten very serious between the two of us very quickly, and essentially was like, you need to sleep somewhere else tonight. And rather than be like, all right, I'll go stay with a friend, I got in touch with Owen, who was like, do you want to come here? And I was like, yes, I do. And he bought me a plane ticket, and I left that night to meet Owen for the first time after an enormous fight with Brendan. This is one of those moments that if I could go back and handle it differently, I would. But I don't regret doing it either. It's one of those terrible things where I'm like, it led to something so wonderful. This relationship with Owen now is like the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. But also, I fucked Brendan up real bad. Like doing that, it was like an unforgivable thing to do to something that someone that I claim to care about. And it was one of those things that in the moment I was so overcome with this, like, I need to get out of this fucking relationship. This is bad. We are both so unhappy. I'm just going to fucking go. And I thought that I was being really smart and just pulling off the Band-Aid. But also I was aware that like, also I just want this. And so I was rationalizing the fact that I wanted something with the fact that I could pretend it was me finally taking this big step that I needed to take this whole time. And it wasn't until things began to really fall apart that I was able to have the distance to be like, wow, that was so shitty of me. I have been awful. And to realize that I wasn't like the put upon wife who was so mistreated by her husband. Like, was he a great husband? No. But also, there was a lot that I could have done to get myself out of there sooner and without causing that kind of damage and pain that I did not do. And when you look back at your actions and really see, wow, if you objectively told somebody, well, my wife was having an online affair and then left me to go stay with him while we were still married. Yeah, I sound like a fucking horrible person. And that's just because I was being a horrible person. You can rationalize all kinds of stuff. You can add qualifiers and explanations and excuses all over the place. But sometimes it just comes down to that you were being a bad person. And Rebecca, low key, she's being a bad person. And she's like finally starting to see that. But she is attempting to break up this couple. And we got Paula being here like, they're bad together. She's mean to him. She doesn't understand him. She treats him badly. That they do not belong together. And all of that might be true. But that's their business. And you trying to come up in here and act like all of that is you somehow doing Josh a favor, when in fact it's just because you want to be with Josh. It's not about doing him a favor. You want something and you want it, and that's it. That is what's so dangerous about Paula in her ear the whole time. So Rebecca winds up just kind of cracking at this like key ceremony, thinking about the fact that Josh doesn't love her, that she's broke, that she lost this big case, everything is going wrong. And she flees and decides to go to Hawaii, even though she overheard him say that he isn't going. So I guess she's just wanting to get the fuck away. All the drama happens and I just get to leave. And she gets on the flight, and who is there but Dr. Akopian? A 5-hour flight to Hawaii where they are stuck next to each other. And Dr. Akopian, they both are trying to get a different seat. And finally, Dr. Akopian's like, all right, so we're stuck. Do you want to try and do some fucking therapy finally? And Rebecca's like, yeah, you know what? I do. Because she's finally realizing, god damn, but she needs help. And it's a great ending. I am absolutely on the edge of my seat to know if the next episode is a bottle episode and it's just the two of them talking the whole time. Because I'm here for that, you know, like I really am. But yeah, so I'm going to wrap. But thank you very, very much to Ashley for commissioning this. The show is super duper good. Erica says, I'm so glad the next episode is sooner. Ooh, I haven't even checked to see when the next one is. Hold on, guys. Let me see. This is the 15th, the 20th. All right, cool. So yeah, I think that's like Wednesday of next week or it might be Tuesday. But yeah, it'll be soon. So, all right, guys. Thank you again so much for hanging out with me. I hope you're enjoying it and I will see you soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.